Hey guys, and welcome. I'm sure we all have some favorites that likely wouldn't get a green light to be made today. And although in many instances I understand where the executives are coming from, I think it's a bit of a shame that many movies have been so sanitized in order to avoid trouble. I think there is a fine line between condoning a behavior versus showing the ugliest aspects of humanity, which is something I clearly enjoy very much if you've seen any of my videos. Although I can empathize with the idea that showing certain behaviors as normalized may be detrimental to the public as a whole, I can't help but wonder how many weird, creative, really out there ideas we're missing out on. Ideas that evoke a feeling, which is valuable, even if that feeling is disgust. So, in this video, I'm going to be talking about 3 movies made in the 90s that likely would have been too controversial to be made today. Number 1 is American Beauty. Made in 1999, American Beauty tells the story of a middle-aged man who, despite having a good life on paper, is so bored he decides some changes need to be made. So he quits his job and becomes infatuated with his daughter's friend, 17-year-old Angela. So for this one, there were a couple of obvious reasons as to why the movie would not be particularly well received today. For starters, Kevin Spacey's obvious fall from grace. But the main reason would be, of course, the storyline. Can you imagine pitching the idea of a middle-aged man who fantasizes about his teenage daughter's friend? Okay, maybe if it was a comedy that didn't consist of A-listers, someone would give this script a quick read. But American Beauty portrays Angela as an object of desire. Although the movie pathologized the protagonist's fantasies and actions to an extent, it also depicted the teenager as a sexual being. Gosh, I feel weird even saying that. With Lester perhaps being a little bit creepy for his desires, pathetic even, but not because of what he was doing was gross. Rather, it was due to the fact that he was acting like he had a chance. And although I believe that disgust at his behavior is by all means warranted, I love the movie, and I still stand by the opinion that it was and is a valuable feature. I read an article which slammed the movie due to its irrelevancy in this post-9/11 era, in which nobody cares about Lester's privileged life and his bad decisions. However, it seems to me that at the end of the day, all of these human emotions will be present regardless of the political and economical climate. Look, we're all amazing at detaching ourselves from the world's problems. Hell, we're amazing at detaching ourselves from the problems in our own communities. And despite having a stable family life, a reasonable job, many of us will be faced with the question of, is this all life is going to be? Let's just hope that our desires don't include preying on high school kids. If the movie were to be made today, Lester would be far more self-aware. Mana Suvari would be replaced with Sydney Sweeney, in her 20s though, still very much controversial because of the age gap and the power dynamic that comes with it. And all the other characters would be played by Pedro Pascal. Number 2, Silence of the Lambs. I don't think this one needs an introduction. Another classic. I'd say less judged than American Beauty, especially since we're all in the middle of a serial killer boom. Thankfully, not in terms of serial killers committing crimes, but with regards to people loving material depicting their ways. Arguably less fatalities. So, let's talk about that point first. With the serial killer craze that's been so prevalent over the last few years, and hey, I'm guilty of this too, many people have started to realize how detrimental the effects of that have been on society. Once upon a time, it was a topic people were interested in because they wanted to understand the reason for the disturbing behavior. Nowadays, it's become a thrill of listening to another story. We've heard so many of them. The names of the victims and the perpetrators all blur together. The horrific crimes become less impactful as we're faced with more and more brutal crimes on the daily. But back to the topic at hand, Hannibal Lecter was really cool. Super charismatic, clever, poised, and I can just imagine he knew all about red wine. Which is problematic, as we have to stop portraying serial killers as these super cool guys, because we now have an epidemic of women and men sending letters to dangerous inmates. The glamorization and popularity that come with the title of a serial killer have been a driving factor for numerous people who decided to commit terrible crimes in order to leave a legacy. And although it is important to know, and to an extent factual, that certain serial killers were very charismatic people, and that's how they were able to sweep their victims off their feet and then capture them, I think we need to stop making them seem cool. Aside from that, I don't think that in the current political climate, Buffalo Bill would be portrayed as someone trans/gender bending. If the studio did decide to take that risk and keep that part of his identity intact, there would certainly be a clear distinction made between his gender and his violent tendencies, which would then create a new objective for the creators of the hypothetical remake, to come up with a completely new Buffalo Bill, one with a different motive. And then we likely wouldn't get to hear the legendary Goodbye Horses. Thanks to all of those factors, I believe it's very unlikely that we'd see a remake of Silence of the Lambs, as if you strip the movie of all of the above-mentioned aspects, there would be no movie left. Number 3, Leon the Professional. So, Leon the Professional is an action drama made in 1994. It's about a hitman who befriends and then saves and takes care of a young girl, Matilda, since her family was murdered due to her father stealing from a DEA agent. I remember when I first watched this movie, must have been still in the 90s, as a child obviously, thinking to myself how cute their friendship was. And to an extent, I still stand by it, as I don't really see any behaviors that struck me as particularly inappropriate. However, the same can't be said for the audience. Natalie Portman admitted to receiving copious amounts of creepy love letters from older men due to the character she was portraying in the movie. It's very disappointing that we have to choose between depicting an interesting story, which in the end made for a great movie, and not appealing to people who are attracted to minors. Having said that, upon looking into the movie further, I found multiple accounts of people advising this is due to Jean Reno's refusal to portray the relationship between him and Matilda as a physical one. The director, Luc Besson, allegedly openly spoke about wanting to make a movie which would play, if you will, with those power dynamics, which of course is incredibly inappropriate and, if you asked me, unnecessary and even detrimental to the movie as a whole. Although I was not able to confirm the validity of this information, some people have come forward claiming in the beginning there was a scene in which depicted physical acts between Leon and Matilda, as well as Matilda's continuous efforts to seduce the hitman. However, the studio which produced the movie made Luc Besson cut those scenes out. On the positive side, the film does succeed in representing how Matilda's traumatizing upbringing could have made her confused, and see Leon as a father figure, as well as a possible object of affection, which may be controversial but would be a real possibility even without any inappropriate behavior on Leon's part. Also, whose responsibility is it to tend to the viewer's feelings of discomfort? Should invoking those feelings be avoided by directors at all cost? I can't help but wonder how this movie would have to be altered in order to be made in 2025. But I have no doubts there would be a lot of backlash due to the perceived ambiguity of the relationship between the two main characters. So what movies do you guys think would not be made in today's climate? I'm really curious to hear your responses. And if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe if you don't want to miss the next one. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.